The Fox Report interview now. Iraqi forces now launching a major air and ground offensive to retake western Mosul from the ISIS savages. Let's bring in U.S. Army Special Forces veteran Ben Collins, and he is a Green Beret who served 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan. I have some Afghanistan questions for you a little bit later, but I want to get to the news that's been developing on this Sunday. And, you know, we thought that this would maybe take a shorter period of time, but you didn't. Taking back Mosul, what's complicated?
Well, I mean, Mosul is effectively a city that's separated by the Tigris River, so you have the east and the west. The east has been very difficult because of the buildup that ISIS has had. I mean, they've had 2 years, essentially, to prepare for this fight. The western part of Mosul, and by the way, they started, and it took about 100 days or so for them to clear the east. The western portion of the city is a much older part of the city, so the streets are much narrower. It's much more densely populated.
So this is urban combat.
This is going to be urban combat. They have to get out of their vehicles and go door to door to door.
Wow. And I remember months ago, because you said, okay, we're going to kick this off in October. That's when the climate is going to let us go in, that dual force between the Iraqi forces and us and other coalition forces. So you get in there, and now it's been a few months, and what do you do with the civilians? Because that was your main concern. They're trapped.
They are trapped, and so some of the civilians got out, but we still believe that there's approximately 750,000 civilians that are trapped in the western part of Mosul. Now, they're already low on food and on water and basic medical supplies, and the concern here is if it took essentially 100 days to retake eastern Mosul, it could take up to 3 times as long
to
take essentially. Wow. We could be looking at months that these civilians are stuck.
What is stuck? Because, I mean, we're looking at these pictures now, so I'm turning around and looking at some of this. You talk about urban. I mean, these are rooftops. What is stuck for these people? How deadly is it?
Correct. I mean, so ISIS, we know, has been digging tunnels in the western part of Mosul. They're breaching wall to wall, so within homes, so they can move through homes without having to go out into the streets. So ISIS is using the civilians as human shields, and that's where they're going to center their forces, either in churches or mosques or schools or hospitals.
Can I ask you, Ben, you know the last President Obama, called them the JV team. There is nothing JV about what you just described. Are they getting better at this?
Well, they're certainly learning. I mean, that's the thing that we've seen with ISIS is they're very good at adapting to battlefield conditions. You know, and the one thing that we have to remember is they still have Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who's the leader of ISIS, who is thought to be in Mosul. And as a matter of fact, it was in Mosul here in this part of the western part of the town where he made his grand announcement of the entire caliphate back in 2014. So they're going to fight very hard to retain this thing. It will fall, but at what cost is going to be the ultimate question.
All right. And how long do you think it could take? You said maybe as much as 3 times. I mean, what does that look like?
So, I mean, this could take upwards, to be fully clear, I mean, this could take upwards of 3 to 5 months for us to actually, or for the Iraqi military to actually clear and hold on.
Do we have enough people on the ground?
So, I mean, there's roughly, we thought that there was about 6,000 ISIS soldiers within Mosul. We think that they've killed about 1,000, so maybe there's about 5,000 left. This is a combined force of about 100,000 soldiers, and mostly that.
And it's still going to take a year?
Well, not a year. I mean, it's going to take months.
Okay.
But yes, I think there's enough forces. The question is going to be what happens after, because the biggest problem that they're going to have. Look, Mosul's going to fall, and as difficult as that is, what is going to happen after? And the sectarian divide between the Shia
it's always
and
the question.
And the Kurds.
Every time we go into one of these countries. All right, let's move on to Afghanistan.
Certainly.
And the possibility that we're learning now from our military that we might look at putting more forces on the ground there. What does that look like and why?
Well, so I know that Secretary of Defense Mattis received some suggestions from General Nicholson, who's the commander on the ground in Afghanistan, that he needs a few more thousand troops to break the stalemate. So the problem right now is the fact that with the U.S. withdrawal, we're down to about 9,800 soldiers that are left in Afghanistan, and it's put an immense strain on a fighting force of Afghan security that is not very well prepared.
Extra dangerous for them too, probably too.
Well, it is in the sense that the Taliban have had a resurgence over the last couple of years, and predominantly my biggest concern is they've managed to retake probably 50 to 60% of the territory down south.
I mean, they just nest. You can't wrench them.
No, and it's predictable scorpions because they really focus their attention on that southern region. So Helmand, which is in the southern part of Afghanistan, you know, that's the birthplace of the Taliban. It's also the home of where their opium production is. So they produce about 80% of the world's opium, and that opium over the last year has gone up 43% in production. And they make a couple of $100 million a year off that. And as long as the Taliban have the financial ability to sustain the fight, they're going to be a problem. And right now they're challenging 5 capitals in Afghanistan, 5 provincial capitals, 2 in the north, 2 in the south, and 1 out in the west. That's a problem.
What is our end game?
That's a great question. I mean, I think for a very long time we've had this idea that we were going to have some strong, centralized Afghan government. We never really understood the threat on the ground. We never really understood the Afghan people. I think we have to get to the point where we're content with what is Afghan good enough, and that's going to be a small central government, but let the tribes essentially dictate their future.
I can't let you get away because all of this has the hallmark, too, of ISIS moving in. We had already read last year, we learned of some ISIS members being on the ground in Afghanistan. If that happens, you know, then you've got 2 huge locations with Iraq and Afghanistan. Syria, I've got to ask you, would we go in on the ground? Because you know it's being talked about right now in wider circles. I'd rather come to you for the facts.
Yeah, right now we are in there in a way in terms of training some of the what the Obama administration was calling, you know, the moderate rebels. I don't think that there is a clear, decisive understanding of what we'd be trying to accomplish in Syria. You know, is Assad staying or is he going? You know, it's things like, and putting soldiers on the ground is easy. Getting them out is much more difficult, and we've never had a clear, concise understanding of what is it that we want to do. What does success look like? We
are in-game constipated. I mean, seriously, it seems to be a theme here. Ben, thank you. I look forward to having you back as this rolls ahead.